By 2750, there will be 0 Koreans left on Earth. Not because of war, not because of disease, because they simply stopped having children. South Korea's fertility rate hit 0.72 in 2023, the lowest ever recorded by any country in human history. To keep a population stable, you need 2.1 children per woman. South Korea isn't even at half that. They're at 1/3. This isn't a slow decline. It's a free fall, and the consequences are already here. In Seoul, elementary schools are closing, dozens per year, not because of budget cuts, because there are no children to fill them. Entire neighborhoods that once echoed with kids playing soccer now sit silent. Playgrounds rust. Swing sets creak in the wind. The government is converting kindergartens into elderly care facilities. Because while births are vanishing, the elderly population is exploding. By 2025, South Korea became a super-age society. More than 20% of the population is over 65. By 2050, that number hits 40%. Nearly half the country will be elderly, and there won't be enough young people to take care of them. The math is brutal. Right now, every 100 working-age Koreans support about 23 elderly people. By 2050, those same 100 workers will be supporting 80. The pension system will collapse. Healthcare will implode. The entire social contract that holds a modern society together will disintegrate. This is what a country looks like when it stops reproducing. So why is this happening? It starts with money, or more specifically, the lack of it. South Korea has the 10th largest economy in the world. But for young people, that wealth is invisible. The average price of an apartment in Seoul is now 18 times the average annual salary. 18 times. In Manhattan, it's about 8. In London, 12. Young Koreans can't afford to live. They graduate from university with debt. They enter a job market that demands 60-hour work weeks. And they face housing costs that make starting a family financially impossible. Raising a child in South Korea costs an estimated $400,000. From birth to university. That's not a luxury expense. That's the baseline. And it's not just about money. It's about time. South Korea has some of the longest working hours in the developed world. The average employee works over 1,900 hours per year. More than Japan. More than the United States. The concept of work-life balance doesn't exist here. It's work-life sacrifice. Women face an impossible choice. Have a career or have a child. Not both. South Korean companies still operate on rigid hierarchy and presenteeism. Taking maternity leave is seen as career suicide. Women who have children are passed over for promotions, sidelined into dead-end roles, or pressured to quit entirely. The gender pay gap is the worst in the OECD. Women earn 31% less than men for the same work. So they're opting out. Marriage rates have collapsed. In 2023, South Korea recorded just 190,000 marriages, the lowest since records began. And without marriages, there are no births. Because in South Korea, only 2% of children are born outside of marriage. Compare that to 40% in the United States, or 60% in France. The social stigma around single parenthood is absolute. But here's where it gets darker. The government knows all of this. They've known for decades. And they've spent over $200 billion trying to fix it. $200 billion. They've tried everything. Cash bonuses for having babies. Subsidized childcare. Expanded parental leave. Housing support. Tax breaks. Free fertility treatments. They've even created a ministry dedicated entirely to boosting the birth rate. None of it worked. Not even close. Because they're treating the symptoms, not the disease. The real problem isn't money. It's the entire structure of South Korean society. Let me introduce you to Ji-eun. She's 32. She has a degree in economics from a top university. She works for a tech company in Seoul. She makes good money, by Korean standards. And she has no intention of ever having children. Not because she doesn't want them, but because the life that would require is unimaginable to her. She would need to find a husband who earns enough to support a family on one income. Because after having a baby, her career would effectively end. She would need to afford an apartment in a school district with good hagwons. The private cram schools that every Korean child attends after regular school. Those cost thousands of dollars per month. She would need to accept that her child's entire childhood would be consumed by academic pressure. South Korean students study an average of 50 hours per week. That's more than most adults work. Suicides among teenagers are epidemic. The pressure is so intense that the government had to ban hagwons from operating past 10 p.m. It didn't help, because the competition doesn't stop. South Korea's education system is a zero-sum game. There are only so many spots at Seoul National University, only so many jobs at Samsung or Hyundai. Your entire future is determined by one exam, the Sunyoung, the university entrance test. On the day of the Sunyoung, planes are grounded so students can concentrate. Police escort students to testing centers. The entire country holds its breath. This is what childhood looks like in South Korea. And Ji-eun wants no part of it. Not for herself. Not for a hypothetical child. She's not alone. There's a term for women like Ji-eun. They call themselves Sampo generation. It means giving up 3 things: dating, marriage, and children. But it's evolved. Now there's OPO generation, giving up 5 things: at-home ownership and social relationships. Then Chilpo generation, 7 things: at hope and dreams. And finally, Gupa generation, giving up everything. This is the vocabulary of a generation that has stopped trying, because they've realized something the government refuses to admit. The system is not designed for them to succeed. South Korea's economic miracle came at a cost. In the 1960s, South Korea was one of the poorest countries on earth. Poorer than Ghana, poorer than the Philippines. Then came industrialization. The chaebols, massive family-controlled conglomerates like Samsung, Hyundai, LG, built an economic powerhouse through brutal efficiency. They demanded total loyalty, total sacrifice. Employees weren't just workers. They were soldiers in an economic war. And it worked. South Korea became rich. But somewhere along the way, the people stopped matching. The system optimized for GDP growth, not human happiness, not family formation, not sustainability. And now the bill is coming due. The collapse is already visible in the economy. South Korea's labor force is shrinking. Companies can't find workers. The military is struggling to fill its ranks. Entire industries are facing extinction. The real estate market is the first domino to fall. All those expensive Seoul apartments, they were expensive because of demand. But demand came from young families. Without young families, there are no buyers. Prices are starting to decline. For the first time in decades, real estate is no longer a guaranteed investment. Banks that lent trillions in mortgages are now sitting on bad debt. Then there's the pension system. The National Pension Service is one of the largest pension funds in the world, worth over $800 billion. But it's a Ponzi scheme. It relies on young workers paying in to support retirees. By 2055, the fund will be completely depleted. Retirees will receive nothing. The government will have 2 options: raise taxes to unsustainable levels, or let the elderly fall into poverty. Both options lead to social collapse. But the most disturbing part isn't the economics. It's what happens to a society when it loses hope in the future. Right now, South Korea is the loneliest country on earth. Single-person households make up 40% of all homes in Seoul. People live alone, eat alone, die alone. There's a term for it: gadoksa, lonely death. Every year, thousands of people die alone in their apartments. Their bodies aren't discovered for days, sometimes weeks, sometimes months. The government has created a special task force to deal with gadoksa. They estimate that by 2040, over 25% of deaths in South Korea will be lonely deaths. This is what demographic collapse looks like at the human level. And it's spreading. South Korea is just the extreme case. But the same forces are at work across East Asia. Japan's fertility rate is 1.2. China's is 1.0. Taiwan's is 0.87. Even Singapore, which has spent billions on pro-natalist policies, sits at 0.97. The entire region is aging out of existence. And the solutions that worked elsewhere don't work here. France boosted its fertility rate with generous family policies. Scandinavia did it with gender equality and work-life balance. But those countries had something East Asia doesn't: a culture that values individual happiness over collective productivity. In South Korea, you don't live for yourself. You live for your family's honor, for your company's success, for your country's glory. That was sustainable when the rewards were obvious, when each generation was richer than the last, when sacrifice meant progress. But now, sacrifice just means suffering. So what's the endgame? The South Korean government has 3 options. None of them are good. Option 1, accept decline. Let the population shrink. Manage the transition. Build a smaller, older society that can sustain itself with fewer people. But that means accepting lower economic growth, a weaker military, less global influence. For a country that's bordered by North Korea, China, and Japan, weakness is not an option. Option 2. Immigration. South Korea could open its borders, bring in millions of young workers from Southeast Asia, South Asia, Africa, replenish the labor force, stabilize the population. But South Korea is one of the most ethnically homogeneous countries on Earth. Over 96% of the population is ethnically Korean. The idea of mass immigration is political suicide. There's already a backlash against the small number of foreign workers in the country. This option is a non-starter. Option 3. Forced reproduction. It sounds insane, but desperate governments do desperate things. Hungary has already implemented policies that give women who have 4 or more children lifetime exemption from income tax. Poland pays parents €1,000 per child per year. China has banned abortion in some provinces. South Korea hasn't gone there yet, but the conversation is starting. Some politicians have proposed tax penalties for childless citizens. Others want to restrict access to contraception. There's even been discussion of mandatory marriage quotas. It won't work, but that won't stop them from trying. Here's the uncomfortable truth. South Korea's demographic crisis isn't a policy failure. It's a system failure. The entire economic and social model that made South Korea rich is now killing it. You can't have a society that demands 60-hour work weeks, unaffordable housing, crushing academic pressure, and gender inequality, and then expect people to have children. You can't optimize for GDP growth at the expense of human flourishing, and be surprised when humans stop reproducing. Biology doesn't care about quarterly earnings. Evolution doesn't care about economic miracles. And right now, South Korean society is failing the most basic evolutionary test: survival. The schools are emptying. The wedding halls are closing. The maternity wards are silent. And every year, the crisis accelerates. 2023, 0.72 children per woman. 2024, projected to be lower. 2025, lower still. At some point, the decline becomes irreversible. Even if South Korea suddenly fixed every structural problem tomorrow, affordable housing, work-life balance, gender equality, it would take decades for fertility rates to recover. And they might not recover at all, because cultural norms, once broken, are nearly impossible to rebuild. An entire generation has now grown up believing that marriage and children are optional, undesirable even. You can't unlearn that. So when you hear about South Korea's tech innovations, its K-pop dominance, its cultural exports, remember this: it's all built on a foundation that's crumbling. By 2100, South Korea's population will have fallen from 51 million to 24 million. Half. By 2200, if current trends continue, it will be in the single-digit millions. By 2750, 0. This isn't a prediction. It's math. And math doesn't care about Samsung's market cap or BTS's album sales. The country that rose from poverty to prosperity in a single generation is now disappearing just as fast. Not with a bang, but with empty cradles and silent playgrounds. The demographic collapse is here, and it's only beginning. If this made you rethink what makes a society sustainable, share it with someone who needs to see this. Because this isn't just South Korea's problem anymore. And hit subscribe, because the systems that built our world are breaking faster than you think. And someone needs to document what comes next.